that talk to your feeder tells you that this thing happened. It's talking about immediacy. When you see, you do not have time. In other words, you better have a plan in place, and this is a good thing for us to hear. You need to have a plan in place when this happens, because you need to know what you're going to do. Because when it happens, you don't have time to think. You have to have a plan in place, ready to go, ready to execute. If you're on the top of your house, you do not have time to go into your house before you head to the mountain. You get off your house and you go. If you're in the field, don't go into the city, go to the mountains, right? I mean, that's what that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, look, when the guy sets himself up as the beast in the holy place, you have moments if you want to survive. So you better know what you're doing. Yeah. One of the questions that I get is, how does that affect us here in America? Because specifically Jesus says, let him who's on the, it says flee to the mountains. It says let it flee to Judea. Let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains, right? Let those who are in Judea. It doesn't say what happens to those who are in America or France or Spain or Portugal or Zimbabwe or Australia, right? It says let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. I don't have an answer to that. I tell everybody the same thing, and that's you just need to ask Jesus. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on this one. I mean, if we're part of the beast country, let's just say that our president is the beast, which I think is possible that we'll be the beast country. If our president is the beast, what's it going to be like in the United States? I mean, what is it going to be like? I don't know. I mean, Jiminy Christmas. I don't have any idea. I don't have the slightest idea. I don't know. I mean, I think we should be prepared. I think everybody should have food and water. That's just a good, healthy living experience, right? You don't know what kind of calamity is going to fall on the earth. You could have a tornado, you could have an earthquake in Oklahoma. We can have both on the same day.
At the same time.
At the same time. Ice storm, Y2K. People laugh about Y2K, but I can tell you, and I don't know, Tammy, Dee Dee, I don't know about you guys. I don't know what you guys did, if anything. But when I look at Y2K and I think about everything that we did, we had water and trash cans in my garage because we worked for 9 years. 9 years we worked to correct all the software that we had written for banks and attorneys and all that kind of stuff. Had we not worked so hard for 9 years, the code that we had would have quit working. My uncle worked for Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF Railroad. They spent $1.2 billion on railroad equipment that they installed over a 3-year period because their trains would have stopped working. The tracks wouldn't have switched because none of the switching equipment would have worked. I mean, Y2K was one of the most amazing feats of human intent and strategy that I've ever seen happen before. The fact that we did not have anything catastrophic happen, I think is substantial. I had one Y2K issue happen with a bank, and interestingly, it happened when the clock rolled to 2001. It was a logic error that didn't handle the 01. It handled everything through the 00, but it didn't handle the 01. I got called over January 3rd, I think, of 01, and I had to go fix a piece of code that I missed. But I'm just saying that it's just good to be prepared for any kind of a catastrophe, right? Everybody in this room, your grandparents, your parents, your grandparents, or at least at a minimum your great-grandparents, had a year worth of food in their root cellar. Everybody had a root cellar. They all knew how to can. They all took care of themselves because they just didn't know. It wasn't as easy as just running to the store. We've just gotten lazy. We're lazy. Let's keep going. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, not during the tribulation. It's not like the sun, moon, and stars going dark are going to be signs that we see sometime during the beast's kingdom early on or even in the middle of it. It's after the tribulation. After the tribulation of those days, the sun will be dark, the moon will not give her light, the stars will fall from the heavens, the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man. We just talked about the sign of the Son, how it's different. He will send his angels, verse 31, with a great sound of a trumpet. They'll gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, verse 32. Learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise you, when you shall see all these things, know that it's near, even at the doors. Verily I say to you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So Jesus is saying, look, you need to be familiar with the template, the symbols, the signs, the things that we're talking about. Be familiar with the process of things. Watch so that you know the sequence. Watch so you know what to watch for. Learn what you need to watch for. Why do you think it said, whoso reads, let him understand, when it's talking about the image of the beast being set up in the holy place? It's because it's the only definitive thing we have. Out of everything that we've read in Matthew 24, there is not a single thing in here that tells us where we're at in history, except for the appearance of the beast man. That's the only thing from chapter 24, verse 1, all the way to verse 35, that gives us a definitive point in time. It is, in essence, the North Star of Matthew 24. We can only guess where we're at up to the point of seeing the beast man. But we have, once that happens, now we know what? Daniel 12 says we've got 1,290 days. Man, can you imagine? When that happens, we're going to be like, holy smokes. Let's make a big long paper chain and start tearing off one a day, because we got to deal with this guy for 3.5 years. Right? 3.5 years of this guy ruling and reigning. 3.5 years. Jesus said, you're going to wish I would come. So much so that people are going to tell you, hey, you know what? We heard Jesus is back at OKC Church. And you're going to want to go because you think that you'll snag onto any hope that you could possibly get. And Jesus is like, not going to happen. I'm telling you in advance. Why? Because I don't want you to get caught off guard. I want you to be able to prepare yourself. And everybody that tells you, oh, it won't matter, I'll be gone, better hope they're right. Because if they're not, and the way I read it, they're going to be here and they're going to go through it and they're not going to be prepared, and it's going to be pretty rough. But of that day and hour, verse 36, but of the day and hour knows no man, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So Jesus now steps in here. What time is it? Oh my gosh, it's time to stop. Sorry, got on a roll. We'll quit. We'll pick it up next week. We'll talk about the days of Noah.
You're gonna make me wait. I know what that means.
When we get back, we'll talk about the days of Noah. There's an interesting thing here, because here's what Jesus did. So Jesus says, look, this is the feed forward for next week. Of the day and the hour no man knows, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Jesus doesn't even know when he's coming back. Jesus has no idea. One of the scriptures says not even the Son knows. So verse 37, we're going to talk about the days of Noah. Verse 45, we're going to talk about faithful and wise servant. And so when we do those, and then we jump into the 10 virgins in chapter 25, the talents and future judgment, the sheep and the goats, there is a common thread between all of these. And I think what you're going to discover is that scripture that said, where the eagles are, where the bodies are, there the eagles will gather, will start to make sense as we go through these next chapters. Because there is indeed a great death experience that happens. It's actually talked about in Revelation chapter 14. There are 2 harvests that happen. There's a harvest of the vines of the earth, and there's a harvest of the grapes of the earth in Revelation chapter 14. And when we get there, all this stuff will start to tie together. But the days of Noah, we get to talk about the days of Noah when we get back together. And they're very interesting, super fascinating. Days of Noah. The guy that built a boat when there was no rain,